And The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Urging peace. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres meeting in Russia Tuesday with President Vladimir Putin.
It is my deep conviction that the sooner we end this war, the better for the people of Ukraine, for the people of the Russian Federation, and those far beyond.
Guterres says he and Putin reached an agreement in principle for the UN to mobilize the evacuation of civilians still trapped in Mariupol. But as Fox's Matt Finn reports from western Ukraine.
Russia continues to bombard Mariupol and Kharkiv, those cities nearly leveled. And to the west, for the second day, explosions rocked a separatist area in Moldova, knocking out radio antennas. Ukraine blaming Russia, and there are growing fears Russia could invade Moldova.
Moldova is not a member of NATO. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin urging a meeting of Ukraine's allies in Germany Tuesday to move at the speed of war to get more and heavier weapons to Kiev. The Centers for Disease Control says 3 out of every 4 U.S. children have been infected with the coronavirus, and more than half of Americans of all ages have signs of previous infection. That number rising dramatically between December and February as the Omicron variant surged. Vice President Kamala Harris is among the latest patients testing positive Tuesday. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says it shows that testing is working.
You're on a regular testing cadence around here. We also take the step to socially distance in meetings as frequently as we can. And also a number of us have chosen to wear masks in meetings as well, just as an additional step in protocol. So those have been in place prior to today, and we will continue to abide by those.
The president tested negative on Monday. The White House says Vice President Harris has not been in close contact with him since then. A big setback in jury selection for the penalty phase of the trial of admitted school shooter Nicholas Cruz on Tuesday. America is listening to Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
A member of Congress runs afoul of the Transportation Security Administration.
Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina was stopped at Charlotte Douglas International Airport when he was found with a handgun in his carry-on bag. Security officials say Cawthorn said the gun was his and cooperated. He's been issued a citation for possession of a dangerous weapon and could face a fine of nearly $14,000. The Transportation Security Administration says this isn't the first time Cawthorn's done this. They say he was caught carrying a gun in his carry-on last year at Asheville Regional Airport. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Police in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin say they've arrested a suspect in the murder of a 10-year-old girl Sunday night. The suspect is also a juvenile. Police not naming him or a suggested motive. The 3-month-old baby kidnapped Monday in San Jose, California is safely back home with his family. Police finding that infant after receiving a tip Tuesday. 3 suspects have been arrested. The state of Oklahoma blocking the use of a gender other than male or female on its birth certificates.
Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signing a bill forbidding the use of non-binary gender markers on state birth certificates. Non-binary people do not identify with traditional male or female gender assignments. Many states only offer male and female gender options on birth certificates, but the civil rights group Lambda Legal says Oklahoma is the first to write a non-binary prohibition into law. Last year, the state's health department issued a non-binary birth certificate to an Oklahoma-born Oregon resident to settle a lawsuit. The Republican governor promptly responded with an executive order banning any changes to a person's gender on birth certificates. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Southern California's Metropolitan Water District ordering people to cut back on sprinkling to 1 day a week this summer as the drought continues to plague the state. Violators will face hefty fines. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Happy Day, it's Kiko the Carabelle. My sister Pika and I are here to share some great news for moms and dads, and kids too. New programs to help working families with child care starts April 5th, and Mom says so many more families now qualify. Visit GuamChildCare.com for more information and to apply today.
Program Penila is brought to Guam's working families by DPHSS, GIDA, Governor Lulion Guerrero, and Lieutenant Governor Justin Ori.
This ad is paid for with federal funds administered by the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good way to start a talk show here on a Wednesday. Is it Wednesday today? Yeah, on a Wednesday afternoon. Right here on Tall Tales, a conservative, constitutionally oriented call-in talk show. So our number, once again, is 671-888-TALK. So you call that number and you'll be speaking with a gentleman named Jose who will see to it that you are escorted straight to the green room, which will give you an opportunity to broadcast your voice to our entire network of international radio listeners, should you desire that degree of, or that level of fame. Okay, so let's start out with Zemi Kotner. If the Daily News decided, and by the way, I'm not going to call them the Pacific Daily News anymore. I'm going to call it the Progressive Daily News. And we'll get to that when I get to the post portion of Zemi Kotner, and I'll ask Jose to explain why we're going to call it the Progressive Daily News. So if the Daily News decided they were going to get out of the newspaper business, get out of the editorial business and go into the restaurant business, they'd specialize in something that McDonald's never makes. The nothing burger. Because that's what most of their editorials are. Our view, return to the basics, promote environmental sustainability. Now, every time you see that word sustainability, it's a code word for a bunch of folks who are doing pretty well, who like to get dressed up and go to have conferences at fancy restaurants, sit around and talk in terms of sustainability, the environment, protecting the environment, etc., and probably wouldn't know a phocinos from a sour apple tree if they were confronted with both. According to the United Nations website, there's a really good place to start. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns, and according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency released in 2016, Maine sea level has risen 4 inches relative to Guam's shoreline since 1993. Wow, is it still safe to go swimming, Jose?
Only if you're above 4 inches tall.
Yeah. If not, man, you better stay out of the water. A later report produced in February 2020 by the University of Guam's Pacific Islands Climate Adaptation Science Center. You see what I mean by the groups that like to get together and have conferences and stress their own importance. They stated that according to data collections, Guam main sea level is expected to rise by 3 feet by the end of the century. Yeah, well, it's not going to be enough. I've always wanted to live on the beach, but up where I live, up in the Jigo Highlands, it's not going to happen. While there are many arguments about the validity of climate change and its causes, one thing remains clear. No matter the reason, the scientific data being collected demonstrates that the natural environment is indeed changing. Well, unfortunately for you guys and your scientific data, the term scientific data used to have a meaning. It doesn't anymore, thanks to a gentleman named Dr. Fauci.
That's F-A-U-X-I?
Yeah, Dr. Fauci. Yeah, who has, has so denigrated the value of scientific data that whenever I see scientific data anymore, I read it as a synonym for gaslighting. Polar ice caps are calving. Sea levels are rising, and the evidence can be seen on island nations like the Maldives, where atolls are under increased threat of being submerged, or in Indonesia, where there are currently plans to move the sinking capital of Jakarta to Borneo. Whether the ongoing changes are man-made or whether the environmental devastation we read about every day is simply part of the ebb and flow of Earth's geographical dynamics, the changes are real and they're affecting lives and livelihoods. I'm going to stop here and make my own comment. If that's the case, and if that's the way we should proceed, then what we should be doing, instead of all of this stuff about carbon taxes and let's abandon fossil fuel and all of that stuff, what we should be doing is giving people who don't live on coastlines, hey, you guys, you're going to have to move. All you folks living in Manhattan, the first 5 floors of your skyscraper aren't going to be any good anymore. Build boat landings on the 6th floor. Because if that's the case, then we're not doing the right thing. What we're trying to do is go into this behavior modification attitude where we tell people, you could do something about this. Just don't burn fossil fuels. That's the key to the whole thing. I am far from convinced. Now, if the climate is changing, I can go along with the idea that it's just the ebb and flow of what happens on the face of the earth. Back in Elkhorn, Wisconsin was under a sheet of ice almost a mile thick once upon a time. Not anymore, although there are times of the year it kind of seems like it. So the climate has changed. You go back and look at the historical write-ups of the Little Ice Age in the 1800s, where the Thames froze so hard, the Thames adjacent to London, that they were having carnivals out on the Thames. Can't do that anymore. But obviously things warmed up. So this panic-stricken, shaming attempt to make me feel guilty because I'm not driving an electric car, it's not going to work on me, and I suspect it's not going to work on a lot of other people. If you really want to take this whole climate change seriously and rising sea levels, then start making marks. And, if you want to do something here on the island, make a mark where sea level will be in the year 2100. And that'll be something we can work with. Anyhow, as we wrap up Earth Month's events, which is really the primary purpose of all of this stuff, it's a sort of a celebration that is best entitled, I'm so great, I'm so pure. We encourage all who call Guam home, residents, businesses, and leaders, to support the many organizations fueling the movement. That's a poor choice of words. For sustainability, and to do what they can to contribute to a greater environmental awareness. How about not throwing trash all over the roads up in Jigo? How about keeping the Marine Corps Drive in Jigo looking like something other than the street to the last house in Timbuktu? From Guam Green Growth Cohorts, now there's a group, Guam Green Growth Cohorts, and Guam Sustainable Culture, to the island-wide beautiful task force, there's no shortage of information, events, and activities to get involved with, to be part of the growing environmental consciousness. Jose, are you part of the growing environmental consciousness?
I'm very conscious of my environment.
Yeah.
But I'm not growing into it.
Okay. Residents and visitors have a chance beginning at 9 a.m. on Saturday to join a free Zero Waste Festival at Ipau Beach. The theme, Numatlo Tategitanu, meaning return to the land, is described by organizers as a community day of collective and conscious connection with our sacred island. Will there be guitar music there and tambourines?
And garbage cans?
And garbage cans. We don't put garbage cans, we don't put trash cans on Ipau Beach because people just come in and put their trash in them.
The day after is going to be great.
Yeah. We encourage all those looking to raise environmental awareness to participate in this event and to continue touting the important message of protection and sustainability. Yeah. I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Jose. I'm going to go home, and tonight, before I hit the sack, I'm going to say the word sustainability 15 times. Sustainability, sustainability. Well, so much for the Daily News. And once again, the Post is still on strike, not doing any editorials. But today they got a little help from an unexpected source. Me. Now, Jose, Rush Limbaugh says, I don't like to talk about myself on the show too much, but this time I have to because it's about me. Remember when Rush used to say that?
He used to say that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I wrote a letter to the Daily News. They had a Sunday forum about the anti-abortion bill. And they said, okay, come on, you guys, write in. They encouraged everybody to write in, everybody but me. So I wrote in. They didn't publish my letter. And when I read it, I think you can figure out why. But before I do that, I'm going to ask Jose to tell you the story about Jose and his letter to the editor, which they did run, right, Jose?
They did run it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was I think I trapped them, but in a good trap.
All right. Explain it to us.
Well, I gave them a letter in support of the heartbeat bill. And instead of all the rigmarole that all the other full-page letters have given in opposition to the bill without talking about the bill,
talked about the crux of the bill being about abortion. And when I went through it, I also described what some of those methods are. Well, true to form, the Guam PDN editors decided to remove the part that talks about abortion so that none of the readers could see it. And kind of like proved my point for me without knowing they were proving the point for me.
Yeah, they wanted to talk about something else. They didn't want to talk about abortion.
They didn't cut off the end of my letter. They didn't cut off the beginning of the letter. It wasn't even long at all. But they cut off the meat of the letter, and that's why I think that they really weren't intending to print anything. And then when they got to yours, because I think yours was too long. No, it was use profanity. No profanity. Oh, I wonder why they didn't print your letter.
Because it didn't align with the agenda that they promoted in their editorial piece. So I suspect the editorial was written before they even asked for people to submit letters.
Exactly.
So from henceforth on Tall Tales, there is no more Pacific Daily News. Henceforth, it is the Progressive Daily News. Okay, so I've got the letter that I wrote, and I sent it to the Post, and I said, the Daily News won't run this letter. Can you run it? I sent the letter yesterday. It's in today's paper. So the Post still has its soul, even if it doesn't do editorials anymore. And here's how it goes. Abortion, bottom line. They'll flood the media with sophistry, straw man, false dilemma, false equivalence, et tu quoque, and appeal to authority. But no matter what logical fallacy, cheap shot, legerdemain, deflection, or mischaracterization of the pro-abortion gang employs, it doesn't change the answer to the fundamental question. When is it okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? Never. And you can see why the Progressive Daily News wouldn't touch this with somebody else's 10-foot pole. They're progressive. They believe in a woman's right to choice to kill her baby. Okay, so kind of along the same lines here, I got an email from Pete Scrow while I was doing my show prep, and it's some pretty good news. Federal Appeals Court ends legal challenge to Texas abortion law. The Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on Tuesday ended a legal challenge to Texas' nearly total ban on abortion brought by providers across the state, closing out a contentious court battle that reached the U.S. Supreme Court. The appeals court dismissed the remaining challenge in the suit after the Texas Supreme Court in March said state licensing officials are not responsible for enforcing the abortion ban and therefore cannot be sued. A 3-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit in January asked the state's high court to resolve this central question to the case. An unusual move made at the request for attorneys for the state that was expected to significant delay or end the challenge. Now, here's what this means. A district court judge in Texas held that the heartbeat bill was unconstitutional, citing Roe and Planned Parenthood. The United States Supreme Court, on petition from the Texas Attorney General, stayed that opinion, meaning that the opinion is not going to be enforced. And the Supreme Court stated because this novel means of enforcement is something we're not prepared to deal with. And I think probably they were also saying, sotto voce, besides that, we've got a case coming up where we may overrule Roe and we won't have to deal with any more of this stuff. But the United States Supreme Court stayed the district court. The pro-abortionists in Texas appealed the district court decision to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, when a federal court is dealing with a matter of state law, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes, they will certify that question to the highest court in the state for the law which they're trying to construe. So in this case, the Fifth Circuit sent it to the Texas Supreme Court and said, in Texas, can the professional licensing boards enforce the Texas Heartbeat Act? The Texas Supreme Court wrote back and said, nope. So the Fifth Circuit said, well, then there's nothing left for us to decide. The Supreme Court stays in place, end of case, and they ordered the district court to dismiss his case. So this is a terrible blow for the pro-aborts, right? It means if you want to get an abortion in Texas, if you want to help somebody get an abortion in Texas, you might wind up with a $10,000 suit filed against you. Now, this is really unorthodox, the way Texas has gone about it. Ordinarily, when you have a state statute that's unconstitutional, the procedural fulcrum is to sue a state official, because the states have sovereign immunity. But in an old case versus, I think it was called Neer versus Minnesota, the rule was that although you can't sue the state, you could sue the state official who's supposed to enforce the unconstitutional law. So in order to avoid that trap, because if you draft a statute that requires state officials to enforce it, a court is going to say unconstitutional. So Texas came up with this really imaginative way to go about things, which I can't say that I'm really crazy about. However, when you're dealing with something as serious as what we're dealing with here, and such a cockeyed Supreme Court decision as Roe versus Wade, I'm going to tuck my desire for niceties in the judicial process away and go back to what I think is the only question that really matters. When is it okay to take the life of a helpless, innocent human? And I'll never come up with a different answer. The answer is never. So good for the Fifth Circuit. A good thing that Texas is not in the Ninth Circuit. Yeah, hooray for the Fifth Circuit. All right, so let's go to a short break, and we'll come back for the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So I got a really short card today. There's a lot of room for audience participation, and I think everybody is probably really anxious to get to the really important part of the card. Of course, I got to start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And there's an interesting item in the Public Law 36-34 part of the program. But the meat here is Democrats versus Republicans. And I'll be able to tell you the whole story of what's going on. I'll give you my impressions as to what may and may not happen, etc. So I don't think there's much need for me to discuss systemic racism today. Except with respect to the Democrats, who are always screaming voter suppression, voter suppression. Republicans are saying voter integrity, and the Democrats say voter suppression. But we'll see who's really suppressing votes here. Okay, on the Public Law 36-34, I'm looking at a notice of a Guam education meeting scheduled for Tuesday, May 4th. It's the meeting of the Safe and Healthy Schools Committee work session, Tuesday, May 4th at 2 p.m. at Tizen. Very short agenda. Call to order. Interscholastic sports adjournment. Now, what do you think they're going to talk about, Jose? Okay. Yeah, I suspect what they'll talk about is they'll find ways to avoid talking about everything but Rugby Boy. And if they talk about Rugby Boy, it will only by using the most extreme forms of euphemism possible. You recall that there was a rugby game where a boy signed up, went out on the field and played rugby in a girls' rugby game and injured 3 of the girl rugby players. And since that time, everybody, didn't play rugby. They all engaged in tap dancing, saying all of the politically correct things and talking about not injuring the girls, but, mutual respect and the respect for lifestyles and everything like that. So I suspect that the meeting on interscholastic sports is going to be more of the same. Instead of just coming out and saying, boys can't play rugby with the girls' teams. That's all. That wouldn't take very long. But this is going to be a long meeting, and it's going to be very verbose. That's my prediction. Okay, next on the card, Democrats versus Republicans. And this started, there's several stories in the media, but I want to give you the whole story here. Everybody else is going to talk about the surface. I'm going to give you the whole story. And I'm going to start out with a decision in the Superior Court going back to August of 2004. And this is an unusual type of case for our Guam Attorney General, who has shown that he doesn't need to have defendants in the cases that he files at the Superior Court. This case has a real defendant. In fact, it's got 3 defendants: the Guam Election Commission, the Republican Party of Guam, and the Democrat Party of Guam. The plaintiff is the Attorney General of Guam. Who did a nice thing here? The Attorney General is supposed to be on the lookout for unconstitutional statutes. And if he sees that one of our statutes is unconstitutional, he's supposed to do something about it. Doug Moylan was the Attorney General back at the time that this case was decided, and he did the right thing. He sued the Election Commission, the Democrat Party, and the Republican Party. Judge Lamarena decided the case, and he said, the court finds that 3 GCA section 16402, which is a typo, it's actually 16502 if you want to go looking for it, is unconstitutional in light of the Supreme Court ruling in California Democrat Party versus Jones, to the extent that section 16402 does not allow the recognized political parties to choose its primary election format. However, the court further ruled that the remaining sections of 402, as you were 502, which requires, among other things, that the voter state his name and residence to the election officials, makes the person voting subject to challenge, and provides that each voter shall receive only official primary ballot shall remain. The court had reviewed the articles and bylaws of both the parties and is convinced that each political party presently allows for non-party members to participate in respective primary elections. We'll get to California Democrat Party versus Jones in a minute, but that was what California did, was they changed their law to have a blanket primary. Everybody votes in the primary and the top 30 go to the general. And the California Democrat Party decision said that's unconstitutional. So that's the basis for this case. So both our parties allowed for open primaries at the time that Judge LaMorena heard this. So he said, okay, this time okay. Therefore, the court finds that with regard to the 2004 primary elections, that an open primary format allowing for a private declaration of party affiliation is sufficient. The court further orders as follows. 1, for all primary elections subsequent to 2004, that the executive director of the Election Commission shall timely transmit a letter to the respective chairperson of each recognized party, inquiring as to whether its bylaws and articles continue to allow for an open primary format or some other primary election format. This court finds that each recognized political party has the prerogative to dictate its primary election format for all primary elections after 2004. What year is it this year, Jose?
It is 2022.
Yeah, 18 years later. Paragraph 2, 60 days or more before the scheduled primary election date, each respective political party chairperson or party's duly authorized representative shall provide written notice to the Guam Election Commission as to whether the party's primary format shall remain open or closed in accordance to the articles and bylaws of the respective political party. If one or more recognized political party chooses a closed primary election format, then the Election Commission shall abide by the written instruction of said political inquiry and require each voter participating in the primary election to state their name, residence, and political affiliation as a condition to receiving said party's ballot. Tie a string around those words, political affiliation. The Guam Election Commission shall adopt procedures to guideline the implementation of this bill. So that's it. So good job, Doug Moylan. Yeah, take a bow, Doug Moylan, because he did exactly what the Attorney General is supposed to do. When he sees an unconstitutional statute, he's supposed to challenge it. He did. The court ruled in his favor. No one paid any attention to it up until now. So let me now go to California Democrat Party versus Jones, and we'll work forward until we get up to the news stories. Okay, so in a 7-2 opinion delivered by Justice Antonin Scalia, the Supreme Court held that the California's blanket primary violates a political party's First Amendment right of association. Proposition 198 forces political parties to associate with or to have their nominees and hence their positions determined by those who at best have refused to affiliate with the party and at worst have expressly affiliated with a rival. Scalia said, a single election in which the party nominee is selected by non-party members could be enough to destroy the party. Scalia went on to state for the court that Proposition 198, that was a California initiative, takes away a party's basic function to choose its own leaders and is functionally both severe and unnecessary. So that's what California Democrat Party said. Obviously, Doug Moylan at the time was sufficiently engaged to know what the Supreme Court was doing and brought his suit here in the Superior Court. Okay, so based on Judge LaMorena's suit, the Democrat Party amended its bylaws. And they added a new section 15, and it reads like this. Unless the unless the CEC votes otherwise, Central Executive Committee of the party, only registered Democrats with the Democrat Party may vote in the Democratic primary. A vote to open the Democratic primary to non-affiliated voters must occur at a CEC meeting held before the deadline stipulated in the case I just read you, and the procedures and guidelines set forth by the Election Commission to implement the ruling contained in Judge LaMorena's decision. So let's just stop and talk about this for a second here, okay? So the Democrat Party is now saying you can only vote in the Democrat Party if you are a registered Democrat. So, you know, when you go up to vote, you present your ID card and you sign it in the appropriate blank, et cetera, and it has your name and your address and all that stuff, right? Well, according to Judge LaMorena's order, there will have to be a notification after the voter's name whether or not he is a registered Democrat. And there are a lot of different ways they could do that. They could just put a star or a marker or Democrat or something like that. And if the answer is yes, then they will give him a Democrat Party ballot. It will only have the Democrat candidates' names on it. It won't be what you've always gotten before, a ballot that had both parties and, you know, the 10% of the voters wanted to vote on both sides and their ballots were void. It won't be that way. You'll just get the Democrat Party ballot if the Election Commission goes along with this. Now, that's kind of shocking because as far as I understand, there are only about 2,500 Democrats on the island. Registered Democrats.
4% of all registered voters is what I heard.
Yeah. So if
anything less than 20%.
You know, when you go to register to vote, there's a blank there, party affiliation. And you can put anything in there. You could put Communist Party in there if you felt like it. Or you can leave it blank. And I think most people think it's smarter to leave it blank because they may not want to have to do any splaining later on. So I remember I left it blank up until I think 1975, and then I changed it to Republican, and I've left it Republican ever since that time. So I suspect a lot of people just leave it blank. I'm not going to do that. So that means then that only 2,500, if my number is correct, only 2,500 people are going to choose the Democrat candidates. That's one possibility. Second possibility is this, that the Democrats will now go out and beat the bushes, grab people by the seat of the pants and the stacking swivel, and haul them down to the Election Commission. You better go in there and register as a Democrat, or you ain't voting you ain't voting for us in the primary.
Better be careful if you see them headed towards Pico with shovels.
Uh-huh. Now, yeah, you know, it reminds me of this guy who said his grandfather was a lifelong Republican. He voted Republican all his life, and then he voted Democrat. Yeah, so that's one possibility. The other possibility is no. The Democratic thinkers are saying, no, let's just leave it as it is, because the 2,500 that are already registered are going to know to vote for Lou. So let that sleeping dog continue to slumber. As on Ray's show this morning, Ray said he remembered Tony Babauta in his valedictory speech after being elected party chairman saying, well, my job is to see that Governor Leon Guerrero is reelected. Yeah. So I just have this sense, I don't know where it comes from, that party officials are not looking at this in a fair, objective, and reasonable manner, saying we've got two Democrat teams for governor. We've got to be fair. to each of them. We've got to give each one, let our voters decide which one will be the nominee. I'm surprised I could get that all out, Jose, because the horn should have been just about deafening. That's the last thing they've got on their minds. And, going back and looking at history, San Nicolas has made a career of sticking his finger in the Democrat Party's eye. I'm not signing no stinking loyalty pledge. I think the people should have the right to go and vote for the folks that think they'll do the best for the people of Guam. I'm not signing it. And remember, man, you talk about blackballing him. He was really blackballed. And the savants were saying, man, that's the end of Mike Nicholas' career. Because, the Republicans aren't going to appreciate that, and no Democrat is ever going to support him. And he goes in, he gets elected to the legislature anyhow, and then next time around, he knocks off the most successful politician that we will ever see on the island of Guam. He beat Madeline Bradallo, and he beat her bad. And he runs for re-election, trailing a lot of bad press behind him. And he beats Robert Underwood, who held the office for 5 terms. He beats Robert Underwood bad. So to tell Michael San Nicolas, you kind of got to go along with the party. I don't think so. So that's what the Democrats did. They have said, and if you take Judge Lamorena's decision at its broadest, it's their call. They get to decide what the ballot will look like. But I told you to tie your string around part of that decision, and I'm going to go back to it now. And this is the part of that decision. If one or more parties choose as a closed election, then the Election Commission shall abide by the written instruction of said party and require each voter participating in the primary to state his name, residence, and political affiliation as a condition to receiving the party's ballot. So if you read this and nothing more, all a voter has to do is when he signs in is say, I'm a Democrat, and they'll give him a Democrat ballot. If you, on the other hand, if you take Judge Lamorena at his word that the party gets to design the ballot, then you got to be a registered Democrat. Very interesting dichotomy. I've got a lot more to say here, but I don't want to do my usual custom of going all the way to the end before I check out the green room, because I might have some really good callers here. But let's take a short break, and I'll come back to CW. Okay.
Half a day. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Gas prices continue to rise, and we are here to help. We have revised Programan Salapi to provide a $300 direct cash assistance payment to most households. We heard your struggle, and we hope this relief will help during these difficult times. Applications will be accepted starting Tuesday, March 15, 2022. For more information, visit doa.guam.gov.
This ad is paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so we've got CW online. I think CW called in once before, and it reminded me of my stretch in the Marine Corps over 60 years ago, where I was a communicator, and there was voice radio, and then there was CW radio. CW is the ... That was called CW back in the day, continuous wave. So I've got Mr. Continuous Wave on the line here. Good afternoon, CW.
Yes, sir. Got a quick point that might be a little confusing for me, and then another issue there. If they came back and said that, okay, in order to vote, you have to prove your affiliation with the Democratic Party, if I understood you right earlier, then they would need to show their voter identification or their voter registration before they voted to ensure that they get a Democratic ballot. Isn't that kind of contrary to the Democratic Party saying you shouldn't have to show an ID to vote?
Well, that's what I said at the get-go. You know, they're always screening voter suppression and, you know, this idea of making someone show his ID card is voter suppression, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're coming around with a super voter suppression. If you're not a registered Democrat, you ain't voting.
Okay, sorry, I guess I missed that. I just tuned in as I left work.
Okay.
The other question that I had was, you know, in a hypothetical situation, what happens if the Republicans decide to do the same thing? So then you have only registered Democrats, only registered Republicans that are able to vote. Isn't that voter suppression of anybody who registered as an independent or, like you said, didn't select the party when they registered?
Well, not really, CW, because if you remember what the partisan primaries are for, they're for each party to choose its candidates. So an independent doesn't have any role in choosing the candidates for either the Democrats or the Republicans. So, yeah, the Democrats have taken a good word like voter suppression and so corrupted it that it doesn't really mean much of anything anymore.
Roger that. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Nice talking to you, CW. And on the subject of, let's say that both parties had a closed primary. We should have done that. As I mentioned on Ray's show this morning, good idea, poor timing. We should have done that in 1970. We didn't have primaries until 1970, but when we got to elect our governor for the first time, that's when we came up with partisan primaries. And that would have been a good time to do it.
Isn't there also a discussion on who pays for the primary if it's closed and for the parties?
Only people that don't understand what the primary is all about.
Okay.
If the government doesn't pay for the primary, there won't be a primary. It is an official governmental function.
Do they pay for these, what do they call those again? Caucuses?
Nope. They don't pay for caucuses. They don't pay for conventions. So before we had a primary, each of the parties had its own convention. Smoke-filled room, ring a bell?
So that's what happened last night.
Yeah, the smoke-filled room. So back in the day, and this whole idea of primary elections is a progressive idea, believe it or not. Back in the time when guys like Teddy Roosevelt were progressives, it's another term that they've so corrupted that I don't even like to use it on anything but the Daily News anymore. So the idea back in, at the turn of the last century, there were three initiatives that the progressives pushed. Initiative, referendum, and recall. Direct election of senators, allowing people to vote for senators instead of allowing state legislatures to choose senators, and primary elections. And the rap on primary elections was this: yeah, we get to go to the polls and we get to vote for any one of the candidates that the party bosses say is okay. So the party bosses choose the candidates, and since that's who does the choosing, there's no real choice for the people. If we had a primary election, we could decide who the party candidates would be. Made a certain amount of sense. If you remember American history and Boss Tweed and, all of the political corruption around that time. So back in those times, the political bosses would choose only people that would strictly adhere to the party, oftentimes the party's corruption, etc. And it would be the same way here. If we didn't have primary elections, it would be the same way here. The party bosses would choose the candidates, and mavericks like I was when I was a senator could have never gotten nominated because they're looking for people that follow the party discipline. They're not looking for guys that are going to override the governor's veto when it's the same party, this sort of thing.
So it's kind of like they're doing the same thing, both things, under the guise of a primary because they've already chosen their candidate. That's what that looks like to me.
Well, yeah, of course, the parties have the ability to come forward and freedom of speech, et cetera. And in the case of the Republicans, I suppose if someone else had been a candidate, they could have taken umbrage at the Republicans rushing to endorse Felix. But that's fair game. We still have a primary election. Okay, I got another guy here, another person in the green room. This would be Repeat, who wants to have a closed primary. And I do too, Repeat. I think it would be much better if we had a closed primary. Number one, it would require the parties to get off their asses and go to work and go out and talk to people and try to get them to register and sign up for the party and then actually promote the party and its values. And it would tend to be a place where people of similar values could be united. As it is with our open primary, there is some party discipline, but it's primarily every man for himself. Or, excuse me, every person for himself. Right, Repeat?
Hey, good afternoon, Uncle Bob and Real Joe. You know, I just wanted to chime in, not really about the closed primary issue itself.
I think you wanted to chime in about Michael San Nicolas. I'm a mind reader, Repeat.
No, actually, I wanted to chime in about you, Uncle Bob. This is the reason why I am such a faithful tailgater, because I have nothing but respect for you calling a spade a spade. When you think something is a good idea, you would say it's a good idea, not just when it suits you. And that's what I think is happening with a lot of the parties, right? Both Republicans and Democrats are guilty of this. They like an idea when it suits them, and they dislike that same idea when it doesn't suit them. And that's what we see going on here, because it was actually the Republicans who, wanted this in the first place. But anyways, I just wanted to say, thank you for always holding true and calling a spade a spade. The other model that I've seen, because I used to live in Washington for a long time, was that it doesn't matter what party you are, Democrat, Republican, Independent, something else, the top voters go on to the general.
Well, Washington had a blanket party primary, but that fell at the same time as California Democrat Party versus Jones. So
right,
blanket primaries are unconstitutional.
Yes, that's true. But, I think there's a way we can tinker with it to make it so that it is constitutional. I mean, do away with the parties, right?
Well,
if we have no parties, then there's no one to complain.
That sounds like something they'd think about in Texas with the heartbeat bill.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to again, express my appreciation of you, Uncle Bob, and why I'm such an avid tailgater.
Well, I could sit around and listen to stories like this all day long. Thank you very much. And if you want to repeat, no problem, Pete. Thanks again.
All right, Uncle Bob. Thanks.
Yeah. So I was down at Home Depot the other day, and I saw this guy approach the clerk, and he said, "I'm looking for a pointed entrenching tool because I need to do some digging in my flower bed." And the clerk said, "A pointed entrenching tool? What in the world are you talking about?" I overheard. I butted in. I said, "He wants a spade." He's just afraid to call a spade a spade. All right, so we had Repeat and CW here. Let me see, where did I leave off with? The possibilities here. What is it that the Democrats are really trying to do? Do they only want 2,500 people? Are they going to make a drive to get more Democrats registered? And these are kind of threshold questions. Or are they going to, or is the Election Commission going to say, registered Democrat or not, we're going by Judge LaMorena's decision, where he says all you have to do is announce your party affiliation. So we'll come back to this right after the big halftime show. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Worries about a wartime nuclear accident. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky calling for global control of Russia's nuclear capabilities, saying Russian forces have been completely irresponsible around Ukraine's nuclear power plants during the invasion, including damaging the Chernobyl plant, which suffered the world's worst nuclear accident 36 years ago this week. Rafael Mariano Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, says there have been spikes in radiation from the plant as Russian forces maneuvered around it.
The situation is not stable, so we have to keep on alert.
Grossi says Russia broke international law when it fired missiles over the nuclear power plant at Zaporizhia. That's Europe's largest. After a meeting in Moscow yesterday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he and Russia's President Vladimir Putin have agreed in principle on the need for humanitarian evacuations from Mariupol.
Thousands of civilians are in dire need of life-saving humanitarian assistance and many of evacuation. The United Nations is ready to fully mobilize its
Guterres will meet with Ukraine's President Zelensky tomorrow. Vice President Kamala Harris self-isolating after testing positive for COVID-19 yesterday. The White House says the president was not in close contact with her recently.
President Biden was tested for COVID Monday and tested negative. But White House COVID response coordinator Dr. Ashish Jha says it's possible the president could be exposed to the virus.
He's got very good protocols around him to protect him from getting infected. But there is no 100% anything.
Dr. Jha says a highly contagious COVID strain is still circulating.
It is going to be hard to ensure that no one gets COVID in America. That's not even a policy goal.
The policy instead is to use tools like vaccines, boosters, and therapeutics to minimize serious illness.
Fox's Jared Halpern. America is listening to Fox News.
Hafa Day. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many jobs. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds. It kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
A firm that tracks automobile values says electric cars are gaining popularity in the U.S.
Kelley Blue Book says so far this year, Americans have bought nearly twice as many electric cars as compared to the same time last year. Popular not only because you don't have to pay for gas at the pump, but because routine maintenance like oil changes, water pumps, spark plug replacements are out. The disadvantage is the high cost, averaging $56,000. The most popular electric car is the Tesla. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Set back in jury selection Tuesday for the penalty phase of the trial of admitted Florida school shooter Nicholas Cruz. Deputies had to surround him for his own safety when a potential juror started making threats. Then others started yelling at him. An entire panel of 70 prospective jurors has been dismissed by the judge. Once seated, the jury will have to decide if Cruz should be executed for killing 17 people at Florida's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School more than 4 years ago. Texas was scheduled to, but will not execute a convicted killer tonight, while many push for her to get a new trial.
Melissa Lucio was sentenced to death 14 years ago after being convicted in the death of her 2-year-old daughter. Lucio's execution, set for today, was stayed this week by the Texas Court of Appeals in a case that's garnered support of Democratic and Republican state lawmakers, celebrities, even jurors in her case, in light of some new evidence.
The prosecution suppressed evidence of her innocence prior to trial, and that new scientific evidence proves that she's innocent.
Lucio attorney Tavon Chardell, she'll remain on death row until a recommendation from a lower court at some point to start a new trial, which isn't guaranteed. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns the property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Okay, so here we are, another big halftime show that we've all come to know and love so much, this marching band, etc. And I'm going to plunge back into Democrats versus Republicans. And I've got a really good caller on the line here, none other than Doug Moylan, who was the Attorney General in the case Attorney General versus the Election Commission and others. So, Doug, you can start right out by taking a bow because you did exactly what the Attorney General is supposed to do.
Oh, that's too much, Senator. Thank you. You did a lot when you were in public service too. I appreciate that. Thank you. About the statute that is being referred to and the decision that came out with the presiding judge at the time, I just wanted to note that on paragraph 4 of that opinion, it indicated that the Election Commission was to adopt procedures and guidelines to implement the ruling. So, I served on the Election Commission for several terms before I became the Attorney General. And the question in my mind right now, because they're doing everything very quickly, and they seem to be reacting, obviously, as you mentioned, from the sitting governor and the potential challenger. But the Election Commission shall have adopted those procedures. And because this is going to be hotly contested and it deals with that First Amendment right of association and the right to vote, this is going to be open to challenge unless the Election Commission makes sure that they had adopted the proper procedures to deal with, like you were mentioning, when people walk into that voting precinct, what are they going to expect? Are the rules published already? So that they know that they have to have registered before with the Democrat Party, pursuant to their rules, and so forth. Normally, and I haven't checked it recently, I'm not sure whether the administrative adjudication law applies to the Election Commission, but the concepts are there. And under the administrative adjudication law, normally there's a period of time when they make the proposed rules and regulations, and then for the public to comment on it. Again, I don't recall after we had gone into court back in 2003, 2004 to challenge the statute, whether or not the Election Commission actually went forward with it. Caesar Cabot was the attorney at the time and has been for more than a decade, I believe, with the Election Commission. So I'm curious what had happened with the Election Commission after the ruling of the court.
Well, Doug, one of my touchstones is that anything that tends to generate fees for lawyers can't be all bad.
Oh, I'm not going to touch that one. Public service, and that was one of the benefits of the Attorney General's office, is they're all flat salaried employees. And I'm not joking there. That is a benefit of any district attorney or elected attorney general or appointed for that matter. You don't get charged by the hour when these attorneys go into court or when they serve the public. It's just supposed to be the same thing.
Well, I hypothesize that what must have happened back in 2003 was that when California Democrat Party versus Jones was decided, it was in the news. In fact, it was important. Yeah. I was writing a column for the Daily News back in those days. I wrote 3 columns just on that court decision and its effect on Guam. So
you're correct.
My suspicion is that you must have seen that and said, hey, wait a minute, our statute's unconstitutional.
Well, the late Joe Mesa, we served on the Republican side of the Election Commission. He was brilliant in his analysis, and we knew that this was an issue. But like you said, the primary elections are elections only for the parties. It's not a general election where everybody can switch sides and decide who they want for senator, who they want for governor, sort of thing. So the primary election does have this aura around it that it's not just a free-for-all. So with that going in, the Supreme Court at that time, and you're correct also, I believe Washington State had a challenge similarly around that time.
That's right.
And it was the California lower court and then the Ninth Circuit both ruled that open primaries were fine, but it was the Supreme Court of the United States that reversed them, upholding the First Amendment right of association, and Guam has that same protection under the Organic Act, which is equivalent to the First Amendment right. So the presiding judge was completely correct, and he is very astute to politics, being a former senator himself. So he understood the issues. It may be kind of difficult for people. I noticed being a voter myself, and before I was on the Election Commission, to understand what is the purpose of the primary, and whether or not the current governor is trying to pull a fast one on Mr. St. Nicholas and his running mate right now. That's within the party politics that's going on and has been going on for a while. But the people have an interest in making sure that when they go to that voting booth, the rules are clear. And, we're hearing everything. It's going to be coming down day to day, week to week now on what these procedures are. You mentioned there's only a small percentage of people that are actually registered, quote unquote, Democrats. Well, what does that mean for those that are going to have to come in and register? The Election Commission is going to have to take those registrations, or are they? And then the poll watchers, when they're sitting in the precinct, what role are they going to have to challenge those people? Has it been incorporated to our existing framework? And that's what I'm kind of curious about. When you walk this through, is it going to pass the procedural due process tests? Because you're dealing with a very valuable right, the First Amendment, right of association and the right to vote. So it's going to be very ripe for challenge, I think, depending upon if those procedures were actually passed by the Election Commission and how the Democrat Party just amended its bylaws and its guidelines and rules. So, but as you know, this has always been a hotly debated issue in the legislature. Both political parties always kind of going back and forth. Where is their advantage or disadvantage on trying to amend the current law?
Well, Doug, I'm really glad that you were Attorney General when you were Attorney General and brought this matter before the court, because I'm in favor of closed primaries. And I would take a certain amount of comfort if you were the Attorney General now, because I have little faith in the current Attorney General doing anything that he isn't, almost forced to do something, except for apply for really silly declaratory judgments. So thanks for calling Tall Tales, Doug.
Thank you, Bob.
Good talking to you. Doug Moylan, former Attorney General. So, I would really favor a closed primary. You know, in some of the jurisdictions, they not only have closed primaries, but they have rules like you must be a registered member of the party 30 days before the election before you can vote in that party's primary. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. And it would be good for parties. It would be good for government. It would be good for voters. It would be good for everybody. But like Doug says, the short-term analysis is always, what's going to help me the most this election? I don't care about the next election or 4 years down the road or, after Bob's not in the legislature anymore or anything like that. But I really favor closed primaries. Okay, we got another potential commenter here in the green room. This would be nobody. Okay. Somebody who just wanted to see if the phone worked, I guess, huh?
It works.
All right. Okay, so that's the law then. Judge LaMorena's decision, the Supreme Court decision on the matter, the Democrat Party's changing of its rules. Now let's take a look at some of the newspaper stories that ran here. First one ran in the Guam Progressive Daily News. Democrats vote to close primary to non-party members. A pretty misleading headline. Their primary to non-party members. Members of the Democrat Party Central Executive Committee voted on Tuesday night to close their primaries for election year 2022 to non-members of the party. The move passed as an amendment to party's bylaws with 30 members of the committee voting yes, 5 voting no, 1 abstention, and 15 either not voting or absent. That shows you how active the Democrats are at their party meetings, right? All you got to do is show up. The amendment cites a court order by Superior Court of Guam Judge Alberto C. LaMorena, which finds that each recognized political party has the prerogative to dictate its primary election format for all primary elections subsequent to 2004. So unlike anybody else on the island, tailgaters know exactly what Judge LaMorena's decision was about, what California Democrat Party versus Jones, which was the foundation for Judge LaMorena's decision, is about. And once again, tailgaters will be the most informed voters on the island. Okay, next story here ran in the Post. Democrat Party primary off limits to non-members. Hours after the Tuesday night vote, Delegate Michael San Nicolas, who is potentially running against Governor Leon Guerrero in the Democrat gubernatorial primary, said this is the latest political move to deny people freedom to vote for whom they choose in the primary election. Well, that's true. that you can't say that that's not true. But he's expanding the freedom to vote in a party other than your own party. But he is really consistent here because this is almost the same thing he said when he said, I'm not signing any loyalty pledge. I'm not going to restrict people's ability to vote for those who they think will do the best job for the island. The article goes on and says he and running mate Sabrina Salas Matanani are weighing the possibility of running as independent candidates. Well, that's a little bit equivocal, isn't it? Because we all know they picked up a packet, which is probably the most important thing that any candidate does. Oh, you picked up a packet. And there was a video opportunity when they picked up their packet at the Election Commission. So when people pick up the packet, doesn't that mean that they have to run, Jose?
It does not.
If you pick up a packet and you don't run, aren't people going to laugh at you?
No, but in fact, there's been I think someone who's picked up several packets.
Really? Who would that be?
Our own Repeat.
That's true.
He repeated his process at the Guam Election Commission.
That's true. First, he was going to run for the delegate position, right? Yeah.
And then, and then now Attorney General.
And now Attorney General, yeah. Okay. Here's a quote. Mike and I are ready. If Lou and Josh and this Democratic Party are going to deny people their right to choose regardless of the party, we will rally the people with an independent ticket focused on all the people of Guam, Sabrina said in a statement. That'll show them, right? Yeah, so here we are again, the right to choose. And we know that Sabrina's pro-abortion, so I guess she's being consistent when it comes to primary voting. I'm for the right to choose, Sabrina said.
Why wasn't the headline Democrat Party aborts Republicans from their primary?
Yeah. The Tuesday night vote, according to Democrat Party of Guam Executive Director Sharak Vojwani, is meant to strengthen the party. The motion, which passed as an amendment to the party bylaws, effectively shifted the Democratic Party primaries to a closed primary. That's exactly what happened. The new section in the party's bylaws states in part that unless the CEC, that's the Central Executive Committee, votes otherwise, only registered Democrats with the Democrat Party of Guam may vote in the Democrat primary. Now, that's a really strange thing to say when you've made this change. You know, it's kind of like when you make a change like this, you would expect that a certain degree of firmness would be the method of making the announcement. We have changed our bylaws because henceforth we will have a closed primary so that Republicans are not getting involved with choosing our candidates.
That's a statement with authority.
Exactly, but that's not what they said. This is what they said. Unless the Central Executive Committee votes otherwise, which of course you don't need to say.
That's called self-sabotage.
But why did they say that?
I don't know.
Because when I read that, I said, well, you know, of course the CEC can change the rules whenever they want. There's a little timeliness factor involved there, but if they say unless the CEC votes otherwise, that suggests to me we might change this. Which suggests to me if there's too much
heat,
backwash on this, too much heat, maybe the CEC will change it and we'll go back to the open primary. Unless the CEC votes otherwise, only registered Democrats may vote in the party. A vote to open the Democratic primary to non-affiliated voters must occur at a CEC meeting.
This is a weird reason to remain objective.
Yeah, but well, they're obviously setting the table for something else. And these are just things that we already know. A vote to open the Democratic primary to non-affiliated voters must occur at a CEC meeting held before the deadline stipulated. You know, we know that. You know, and in order for the legislature to pass a law, there must be a quorum present, et cetera. You know, we know these things. You don't need to repeat them. But when you say them and it's not necessary, the suggestion is this is something that we're thinking about doing. Yeah. So, yeah, the open to non-affiliated voters must occur at a CEC meeting. The only other thing I can think of is this, that they may have been watching Elon Musk and Twitter, and maybe they're anticipating a hostile takeover. Maybe they're anticipating another group of Democrats saying, I don't know what that CEC is doing. What the hell do they think? They want to throw the election away? We've got to let everybody vote in the primary. Let's change the rules. And they've come out and said, well, yeah, you're going to change the rules. Got to be a CEC meeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I suggest the Democratic Party go even further. And at the time of the primary, they must state their name, what is it, the address, their party affiliation, and sign a unity pledge.
Yeah, well, if they really want to make it stick, and discourage a lot of people from voting, name, address, party affiliation, and sex. Boy, there's a lot of people are going, if I can't mark binary on that, I can't, I'm just not going to do it.
We might need another page.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't put LGBT, I can't get it all on this, in this little blank here. It's only 5 inches long. Okay. So back to the news report here. So Sabrina says, we'll show you guys, we'll run as independents. Now, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to educate you as to the law about independent candidates. And let's see here. I've got the statute right here. This is 3 GCA 15207. Nomination papers may be filed on behalf of independent candidates. The paper shall be in the same form and signed in the same manner as the case of party candidates. So same rules apply. But here's the kicker. At 15404 alpha, the governor and lieutenant governor team receiving a plurality of votes cast for a partisan nomination shall be the party nominees for the general election. All you need is a plurality. But no gubernatorial and lieutenant gubernatorial team running in an independent column shall be eligible for the general election ballot placement unless such team receives a minimum 20% of the total combined votes cast for the winning team seeking the party nomination. So if there are 20 total, whatever the total is, the independent team has to get 20%. Now, of course, the independent team advances to the general election if they get that 20%. But let's stop and war game that for a second now. So let's say that when I go to the polls, I want to vote for Michael's running as an independent, and I want to vote for him. I don't care about voting for either party's primary, for their senators, for their mayors, or anything like that. I want to vote for Michael. Well, that's exactly what happens. I get to vote for Michael and Sabrina, but I can't vote for my village mayor. I can't vote for anybody for the legislature. I can't vote for anybody but for the Washington delegate. Now, this is going to discourage some people from voting. So what Michael has got to do, he's got to say, forget all those other races and vote for me, because I got to get that 20%. No 20%, no general election. He gets the 20%, he goes. Now, for the other candidates, they only need 4% of the votes cast for the party candidates. So like Doug Moylan said, there's possibly some litigation that will arise from all of this if Michael got 19.999% of the vote. Pretty interesting possible challenge on that one. But that's what he needs. He needs 20%. So Republicans, well, let me get farther into this article, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the Republicans and their strategy and the Democrats, etc. But anyhow, Sabrina said, Mike and I are ready. If Lou and Josh and this Democratic Party are going to deny people their right to choose regardless of party, we'll rally the people with an independent ticket focused on all the people of Guam. The new section in the party's bylaws states that unless, I just covered that, didn't I? And the equivocal nature of the party's changed bylaws. We're going to do we're going to do a closed primary, but if we want to change it, this is how we're going to do it. San Nicolas criticized the party's leadership's moves. Quote, the attempts of the Democrat Party leadership and the Central Executive Committee made up of Lou and Josh supporters and employees to cut off voters who don't register as Democrats from voting in the Democrat primary election is a simple attempt to force people to get partisan rather than to vote for what they feel is best for Guam. And that shows it's all about themselves and not the people, San Nicolas said. All right, we're going to head for Wrigley Field for the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Wrigley Field in Chicago, and the rule is still that if you hit the ball, you must run to first base, even though you may like third base better. Some things never change. So back to Democrats versus Republicans. Where was I here? Yeah, a little dig there from San Nicolas. And then back to the article. Across the nation, parties have various ways of conducting their primaries from state to state. Bourjwani said the vote had nothing to do with Democrats who announced their intention to run in this year's election. I got to repeat that. Bourjwani said the vote had nothing to do with the Democrats who have announced their intention to run in this year's election, but rather was prompted by a March 10 letter from the Election Commission. Well, Judge Lamarena said the Election Commission has to send those letters out every election. So those letters have been coming out since 2006.
So what was the different factor this year? Oh, Michael San Nicolas.
Well, maybe what Bourjwani is saying is that we didn't have anybody in the Democrat headquarters who could read before this year. Now, when the letter came in, we actually read it, and we decided, ooh, we could have a closed primary. I never thought of that before. Yeah. Bourjwani said the vote had nothing to do with the Democrats who have announced their intention to run in this year's election. Very nice. In that letter, GEC Executive Director Maria Pangilinan gave the Democrat Party until June 28th to inform the commission if its articles and bylaws allow for an open primary or another primary election format. And once again, I'll interrupt here. The one thing that I think is good news in all of this stuff is that we've got the best direct election GEC executive director that we've ever had right now. Maria really runs a good shop down there. She knows what she's doing. She's responsive. User-friendly, very good job. If anybody can sort this out, it'll be her. GEC cited a 2004 order by Superior Court Judge La Morena, which says Guam law, which disallowed recognized political parties on Guam from choosing their primary election formats, is unconstitutional. Of course, we know that. The order states that all primary elections after 2004, each party had the prerogative to dictate its election format. According to Bojwani, a review of the party's bylaws shows that current bylaws have not been updated since the Supreme Court precedent was set, and Guam court ruled that the Guam law addressed primary elections was unconstitutional. Unlike our Democrats and the CNMI, Guam law does not allow for a candidate to come to the party, and only after the party states that candidate X is the party's candidate are they listed as a member of said party, Bojwani said. Going back to what I was talking about as far as the smoke-filled room. By allowing for a closed party, the party is allowing all Democrats to choose who Democrats want to be their representatives, he said. All right, let me see who I got in the green room this time around. Boy, he's having an early... Jack, it's an early supper today, huh? You usually don't chow down until I get to Churchill Downs.
No, today I was released early from my obligations, and I'm home. I'm gonna fix myself some tuna fish casserole. But I called because I was listening to you, and I heard a little bit of what Doug Moylan was saying. If I could just rehash, we spoke about this many years. I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to primaries, we both agree that primaries are about parties. They're not really about individuals. They're about political parties. I think we agree on that, right?
I'm reserving on that. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, and I know where we differ. I stand firmly that public money shouldn't be wasted on primaries, because if it's primaries are basically for political parties, then political parties should fund their own primaries. They should do their own primaries.
Jack, if we're applying the same old, if that were the case, there wouldn't be any primaries.
Okay.
Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Is that what you want? No primaries?
I don't mind that. I mean, they're for political parties.
Then how would Jack, if we didn't have primaries, then how would the candidates be chosen for the general election? Just a free for all?
Well, what we have right now is an open primary. I mean, until recently, it was an open primary. So it was basically like it wasn't even a round robin. It's more it's more like if you lose and if you want to challenge it in court, you can go ahead and challenge it in court. But I think that in most states, political primaries are not funded by the government. I think they're
hold on a second. Where's that sound effect? Wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah, no, Jack, that's incorrect.
Okay, so you're saying that
the case
primaries are funded by the government.
The case law is clear. Primaries are public elections funded by the government. The government has a supervisory role in it. And if you're listening a little earlier, you'll know why we have primaries. It goes back to the so-called progressive era, and it serves a valuable function. If we didn't have primaries, then the party bosses in smoke-filled rooms would decide who goes on the general election, and you really wouldn't have the kind of choice that you have when you have primary elections.
Well, I think this primary right now just shows that it's still the party bosses in smoke-filled rooms that are choosing the candidates.
And you saying that because why?
Because of the rules and regulations that just been passed down, saying that this primary will now be. You now have to be declared, a Democrat to vote in.
Well, there's a word you have to understand, Jack. And I haven't gotten to it yet. I don't know if I'll even get to it today. But the word you have to understand in this context is raider. And the purpose of one of the purposes of closed primaries is that it eliminates raiders, so that you don't have people who are card-carrying lifelong Republicans coming over and voting in the Democrat Party to achieve some sort of a political advantage. That doesn't do the process any good. It doesn't do either the parties any good. And that's the reason that most states have closed primaries.
And so I think we'll be forever on opposite sides of this line. I think political parties, that's what the primaries are for political parties. I will never vote in a primary. I'll always vote in a general.
Well, I'm just going to remind you then, Jack, of one of the primary dedications of Tall Tales. Tall Tales is dedicated to giving a voice to callers, no matter how wrong they may be.
Okay, so anyway.
So you're taking advantage of that. So good talking to you, Jack. I hope you.
I was going to discuss about what the Democratic Party. This isn't the first time that they've done this snafu during the election. They did it in 2008. They did it in 2016.
What did they?
2016.
What did they do,
Jack?
Hey, Jack. I can't listen that fast. What did they do in 2008?
In 2008, the primary was generally Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders. And you could go through the history and see that, the Democrats pretty much wanted Hillary to be there, and most progressives voted for Bernie. And the result ended that, hey, listen, there was problems with this primaries, and since it's a political party election, it was up to the Democratic Party to choose who would be representing their caucus or their state and it was a big hassle.
Okay, let's leave caucuses and conventions and all of that's what you have when you don't have a primary. But Jack, you're not being very persuasive on 2008. Let's try 2016.
Well, no, 2008 we too had a straw vote here, and when the Democratic Party held a straw vote for the presidential election, all they asked is that you bring down your driver's license. They didn't ask you to pledge your allegiance to the Democratic Party. Said, no, come down, come to the Micronesian Mall.
Okay, now, Jack, let me straighten you out here. What you're talking about was a preferential vote here, in effect, what you're asking for, where it was a primary election. It wasn't a general election, because in our general election, when we vote for president, it's the same rules as every other kind of voting. So what the Democrats did was they allowed people to come down in the Hillary election and vote for Democrats if they said they were Democrats. And Ray brags about this all the time. He said it's the only time I ever got a chance to get close to presidential election. So I went down and I said I was a Democrat.
Yeah, and that vote mattered for him, not necessarily for me.
And that's what you get when you don't have regular primaries. What about 2016?
But that was a primary.
Okay, what about 2008 then?
2008, Bernie versus Hillary. That was a primary too, in which, in fact, Hillary made a call here to one of the radio stations. It was during Patty's time, and was stumping for the votes, and yeah, she got it. I think she got the majority, and I think all the seats went to her. But it's not it's not the perfect thing. I do believe that primaries are just for political parties, and that's where.
Well, Jack, I got news for you. Elections are for political parties. You want to do away with elections? You're going to have to have a stronger. You're going to have a stronger base for your argument than that. And Jack, in the face of settled law that's been on the books since the turn of the last century, that primaries are governmental elections paid for by the government, supervised by the government, and will remain in place until the people decide not to have them. And if the people decide not to have them, then we go back to the smoke-filled room. Now, there's no sense, Jack. There's no sense going back and plowing that same ground again if you can.
Well, no, Bob, you're wrong, because I voted in Illinois, and the primary elections wasn't run by the Illinois Election Commission.
Well, then it
was
wasn't
run by parties.
It wasn't a primary then.
Okay, Bob. Here we go again. All right, so we'll forever be on opposite sides of this. Well, have a good day.
All right. So let's see. It's time for Churchill Downs.
See, it was really early. He hadn't had his dinner yet.
He was in a hurry to win the argument so he could get to his dinner.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Here we go. Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. And when I stumble out of the grandstand, I see somebody who's already been on the show. And I guess he just wants to repeat what he said before. So I'll go for it. Go for it, Repeat.
Yes, Uncle Bob. You know, I listened to what Doug Moylan said when he called in. I loved the history lesson there. But with respect to what you and Joe were trying to surmise about the specific language of that letter by the Democratic Party, I have a different conclusion. I believe that they left the door open, that if the tables were to turn, they might go back and make it an open primary again if they only have one candidate and the other side has two.
Well, that's true, Repeat, but they didn't need to put that in their amendment to Rule 15. I mean, that's just any rule you can make, you can amend, or you can change. To me, it had to be a signal to somebody for something.
Yeah, you know, and if that's the case, though, if I'm right, and they're just leaving the door open in case, you know, it speaks to what I was talking about earlier, where people favor an idea when it suits them and disfavor an idea when it doesn't suit them. And if that's the case, then shame on them.
Yeah, well,
so
politics is a contact sport, Pete.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of people like to think that I'm beholden to a party or to a particular politician or anything like that. Yeah, I see it in the comments or I hear it. You know, I am not beholden to anybody. I try to be like you, Uncle Bob, and call a spade a spade. And, you know, I also believe in meritocracy, and I'll just say this for the record. Everything I have, I earned myself. Nobody gave me anything, and I am beholden to nobody.
And have you decided whether you're going to run for Attorney General or not?
Well, speaking of that, my other half just gave me her blessing, and so that hurdle was the biggest hurdle, or the most important hurdle, rather, not the biggest hurdle, but the most important hurdle. And so now my exploration continues, and I have a little time to make my decision, but the exploration continues.
How does that old saying go? For every successful man, there's an angry woman standing behind him, something like that.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good talking to you again, Repeat.
All right. Thanks, Uncle Bob.
So long.
I have it on rumor that her name is Kate.
Kate.
Duplicate.
Yeah. Duplicate. Repeat, right? Yeah. Okay. Very good, Jose. You're sharp as a tack today, right? All right. Where was I here? San Nicolas Montanani object to closing primary, suggest independent ticket. This is the next news story here. After leaders of the Democrat Party voted to limit the primary to party members, gubernatorial candidate delegate Michael San Nicolas and running mate Sabrina Salas Montanani suggested running on an independent ticket. San Nicolas and Montanani issued a statement Tuesday night objecting to a closed primary, which would require voters to be registered Democrats in order to participate. San Nicolas said the move was a simple attempt to force people to get partisan rather than to vote for what they feel is best for Guam, and that shows it's all about themselves and not the people. And of course, everybody, whoever runs for anything, is only for the people. I am waiting for the candidate to come along and say, I'm running because I want to do well for myself, and the hell with the people.
I'm going to keep my mic off.
Yeah, there was a guy named Fred Harris, who was a liberal Democrat from Oklahoma who ran in 1972 on the Democrat side, and he had a very novel political statement that I can't repeat because of one of the words used, but Fred Harris, vote for Fred Harris. No more bull shucks. Yeah, he got a lot of press out of that one. Okay. San Nicolas and Montanani said party's leadership was dominated by supporters of Governor Leon Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Tenorio. Mike and I are ready. If Lou and Josh and this Democrat Party are going to deny people their right to choose regardless of party, we will rally the people with an independent ticket. Earlier Tuesday evening, members of the Democrat Party Central Executive Committee voted to close the election primary to non-members of the party. So there you are. That's the whole story about who did what to whom. What the law is, what the election commission did, what the party did. Now we can talk just a minute here about strategy, because I opined several weeks ago that if Michael San Nicolas ran for governor, Felix would win. And my analysis was this: if Michael runs for governor, whoever loses the primary will be so angry and upset that person and that person's followers will not support the winner. If Lou loses, there's no way that she and her minions would say, well, in the name of party unity, let's back Michael San Nicolas. It's just not going to happen. And vice versa. So if that happened, or when that happened, that was my analysis. I didn't see this closed primary angle coming forward. So if Michael was the key, because the losing side would either come over and vote, try to make a deal with Felix, or vote for Felix, or maybe even just stay home. Any one of those favors the Republican Party, who's not going to have a fight in his primary. Now, if Michael runs as an independent, that really changes a lot, because there would be no compulsion whatsoever for the Democrats to support Michael San Nicolas. It makes it even better for Felix, because Michael goes from a kind of a shunned Democrat to an apostate, an infidel, someone that no Democrat with a conscience could ever back.
He's out.
He's completely out, because not only does he not support the ticket, he doesn't even want to run on the party banner. So that's even better for Felix. And if Michael wins, then the suspicion that I have is that the real Democrats, the yellow dog Democrats, are going to say, like they always say, I don't care. I don't care if it's a yellow dog. I'll vote. If it's a Democrat, I'll vote for it. I'll vote for a yellow dog. But I ain't voting for no turncoat like Michael San Nicolas, who abandoned the party because things didn't go his way. So if Michael runs as an independent, it's even better for Felix. That's my analysis, and I'm sticking with it. I expect Chirac Bourgeois will call to set me straight on that one of these days. Probably not. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the show here. I've got another item on the card here. It's Troy versus the Neocats, but I don't want to go to that now. I got a feeling that we're not done talking about this issue and that you probably didn't get a chance to call or talk about it as much as you wanted. So we'll leave it on the card for tomorrow just to accommodate any callers or posters to make sure that we thoroughly flesh out this issue because this is a really important one. And until I hear Ravel's Bolero, I'm just going to take a look at Facebook and see what folks are saying. Starting out with Jose Pajago Jr., Guam senators ranked third highest paid in the country. Go figure, with a population of 180,000. It's just terrible. It's 153,000, Jose. Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right. Let's see. Benedoso Tautau, Peter Santos. Let's see here. Peter Santos of solid character. Hope he doesn't turn on his supporters and lets go of the hate for MSN. And Pete doesn't care much for MSN, that's for sure. And let's see who else chimed in on Facebook this afternoon. My Facebook is froze. It loosened up. Let's see here. Jose Tedpago, is there a time frame an election that a party has to make this decision so the commission and public can prepare and be informed? I mentioned it was in Maria's letter sometime in early June.
60 days, is it? Right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So the election commission's got a lot of work to do, and no matter how they do it, there are going to be people that are angry at them.
Now, some people might try to connect last election statistics to this one, but I think there's lots of different factors involved. It seems similar because there could be potentially a write-in vote, potentially, or a third party in the general election.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of things. Tenorio's no way Felix, and I don't think the write-in this last time was a Democrat. This time it could be another party.
It's possible. Okay, maybe I can squeeze in one more caller here before we shut down, Jose.
Looks like they hung up.
Yeah, okay, I guess we got it. We did it. We squeezed him in. How much time have I got left? Yeah, okay, here it is. Caller, you got about 30 seconds.
Okay, I just was curious. I mean, Mike's the master of social media. Can he get the people to register as Democrats and take the election on the Democratic ticket? When can they register to be Democrats? Up until the primary, right?
Yeah, up until, you can register anytime. Even if you've registered before, you could register right up until it's time for the candidates to turn in their packets.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, that's going to be interesting.
You made your mark. Talk to you later. And it's that time again. Time for me to say, oh, somebody move my camera here. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Headed for orbit, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. SpaceX launching a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral, Florida, just a few minutes ago.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
It's a mission to carry 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from the European Space Agency to the International Space Station. The Dragon crew capsule named Freedom is scheduled to dock with the space station later tonight. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin chastising Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for saying the Ukrainian conflict could go nuclear.
Saber rattling and rhetoric like that is just unhelpful. Hard to say what's motivating Mr. Lavrov, but again, I think that kind of talk should be avoided.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres met with President Putin yesterday, the two reaching an agreement in principle for the evacuation of civilians holed up in bunkers beneath a mostly bombed-out steel plant in Mariupol. On the 36th anniversary of the world's worst nuclear power plant accident, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency visited the Chernobyl site yesterday, saying Russian forces may have damaged that plant.
It is visible that there is damage, and we are assessing that because our job is to give precise information.
Rafael Mariano Grossi says radiation levels at the plant, which is covered with a containment shroud, are normal, but the situation is not stable. The Supreme Court yesterday hearing arguments over the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers, which the Biden administration is trying to end. Today, the High Court will hear arguments in Oklahoma's ongoing battle with Native American tribes over the state's authority to prosecute people accused of crimes on Native American lands. America is listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
5 inches of rain by tomorrow.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen starting May 2nd at foxnewspodcasts.com.
Sunday, the NASCAR Cup Series is back on FS1.
Get after it today.
Get your engines running.
Great.
400 miles of concrete mayhem can mean one thing. Dover, a track dominated by Hendrick, Larson, and Elliott, look to lead the pack again. But don't forget, this place is a monster, always ready to ruin the day. The NASCAR Cup Series, Dover. Coverage begins Sunday at 2 Eastern on FS1.
The Centers for Disease Control says 3 out of every 4 children in the United States have been infected with the coronavirus. Pfizer submitting its application for emergency use authorization of a COVID vaccine booster for younger children.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration will now consider authorizing the 10 microgram booster for kids age 5 to 11. The vaccine for that age group was given its emergency use authorization last October. Testing by Pfizer and its global partner BioNTech shows what the drug makers call a strong immune response. In addition,